Hello everybody, what is going on? My name is Blue and welcome to the inaugural episode of Meta, the new SPP podcast that I just decided to start randomly 2 days ago. So welcome everyone, we are here and we're going to be talking about SPP, the competitive scene, Guild Wars 2 in general, so on and so forth. Lots of fun tonight. So joining me, I have 3 players from the North American scene with me tonight. Was supposed to have Rom, but unfortunately I believe he has either gone to sleep or has forgotten he was supposed to be here, so not going to be having him, unfortunately. But joining me are going to be 3 players, which I'm sure a lot of you may recognize. Some of you that are watching that may not be too familiar with Guild Wars 2 PvP, may not recognize them, but of course, let's give them their introduction first of all. So Backpack, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I am Backpack. I play Engineer. I don't currently have a team because, yeah, I'm too young for esports, but cool. Next.
Next we have Phantaram. So Phantaram, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, thanks for having me, Blue.
No problem.
I'm an Elementalist. I've been playing since forever. That's pretty much it.
And then last but not least is going to be Nos. Nos, how you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me on, sort of last minute thing, and I play Necromancer for the Abjured, and I also have played since forever like Fanta, but I've only sort of recently compared to him got really into SPVP, like 6 months ago maybe? I forget.
Phantaram, I think, is probably the most long-standing player here. For anybody that doesn't remember, he used to play for the original Team Paradigm roster. So Phantaram, I think, is the longest-standing player with us at the moment. So he's going to be kind of our, like I said, basically our old boy here tonight. But anyway, we're going to be talking about quite a bit. We'll be starting off talking about the World Tournament Series. So let's dive right into it. And the thing that's probably the most relevant right now with the World Tournament Series. What are your guys' thoughts on the qualifiers this weekend? Just in general.
Looking forward to it, and I'm going to be shoutcasting it, so that's something that's new and unique to me. I'm not going to be on the battlefield, so to say, this time, and hopefully I'm rooting for my team. Go Abjured.
I, on the other hand, will be rooting for Cognitive Gaming, a team I have fostered up, and who will be participating. And yeah, they're going to do all right. I think that Abjured will win it because they just have so much more experience as a team, and then I think they're generally just playing at a higher level right now. But Fanta can talk about that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'm the only one here actually participating in it. But I think we have the best chance out of the teams of winning it. But I will see what happens.
Alright, indeed. It's going to be quite interesting, so that'll be this weekend, folks. So talking more specifically about NA, we saw yesterday in the Misspedia Weekly Finals, these Uncivilized Rough Boys did not do so well versus you guys. Do you think that that's like a precedent for this weekend, or do you think that was kind of just like warm-up for them? You can... That's for anyone to answer, it's not just you.
I mean, historically, we've... Well,
like,
okay,
I've heard that during the course of this week, and granted, obviously there was some issues with the Abjured roster that was going on earlier in the week, so for those who don't know, Nos and Cade were originally supposed to play, but for their own personal reasons, they were not able to play on the actual roster that would end up going to China. So with those roster swaps, I heard that earlier in the week there was some troubles going on in Team Q, but obviously by last night it seems as though that's not the case at all. So like, what's been going on with that?
3 or 4 days ago, I think, we actually did lose a game to Rough Boys. But that was like one of the first times Ostrich was playing Necro. And then we immediately swapped him to Engineer and Team Q'd again, and we fought them after that, and then we beat them like pretty badly. And since then we've been winning pretty consistently against them, but
yeah.
I don't know. They're putting up some amount of points on us, which is like the way NA plays right now. It's like super snowball-y. When you gain control of the match, you have the potential to just like 500, 100 them like immediately, you know? Like there was a match we had against Radioactive in the Misspedia last night where it was like 280 to 290 or something, and when we 3-capped, and then the finishing score was 500 to 280. It's like, even though it was an extremely close game up to that point, as soon as we got control, we just won. And that's kind of how it goes. So like, if the other teams can just gain control and then hold it, it'll look like they're stomping us, you know? So the games are closer than they look, I think.
All right, cool. So, I mean, what do you guys, Nos and Backpack? Obviously, Nos is probably going to be rooting for the Abjord. I think Backpack is in their camp, too. Do you guys think that there's any chance at all for Uncivilized Rough Boys?
I think with the roster swaps, we're not as strong as we were for the TOG because sort of a new comp, and Jay is just sort of getting back in the swing of things too. He hasn't been playing much since the good fights sort of disbanded and went their own way. But I do think that they're doing really strong right now. I've been screaming them. They've been getting better by the day. So I do think they're the favorites to take it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I feel like, it's possible that Rough Boys could pull it off, but I feel like they'd have to change their comp and go some crazy route and just win off that, because as it stands, like trying to mirror comp them almost is just not going to work, because like Rough Boys, I think, had like three people or so re-roll the new classes, and while Abjurd has like arguably some of the best, if not the best, allies in the game, as well as some very good NGs and a really good thief, and like they're kind of building around their mains, so they're not really changing much. And the way NA is playing right now, the rotations are pretty simple, so it just comes down to basic comps and mechanical skill. And while Rough Boys, I think, is just trying a little too hard to get that right comp when their mechanical skill with that said comp isn't really where it should be or where it needs to be for them to win. So I feel like if they go back to like what they're playing, like Subkid on Mesmer or something crazy like that, I think that's the only chance they really have at winning at this point.
And that was the exact same advice I gave yesterday during the shoutcasting, and sort of how they can improve. So me and Backpack are on the same page there.
I mean, do you guys think that it is a possibility for them if, say, like, Subkitty went back to Mesmer and we had Keep Up Playing Guardian, almost if they played like a TCGS comp, do you think that that would work better versus the Abjord, or would the Abjord's comp sort of still kind of beat them out there? It's obviously a bit late for these changes now, considering it's 2 days away. They probably wouldn't be able to make such a drastic swap. But
right.
If that was on their back burner, do you think, and if they have maybe been trying that in secret, do you think it's maybe a possibility to beat out Abjord?
I'd still say no. I mean, the way that comp has to be played, if they do play it, is at such a high level that unless they've been practicing for the past 4 months and are really just amazing at it, I don't see it happening, because just that comp requires so much more coordination, playing like really, really high burst, really squishy characters compared to like what Abjurt's running, where Celestial Bruisers, they can do whatever they want. They can hold 2v3s, they can win all their fights. Doesn't really matter how they rotate, because just about every fight's a favorable matchup. Whereas when you run like a 4 burst and a Guardian or whatever, you just have to rotate a lot better and actually pay attention to where you're rotating certain people.
All right, cool. So this is where the show is going to be a bit awkward, because this is where Ram would have been shining as an EU representative, but since we don't really have any EU players, I'm going to ask this, but I'm not sure how much insight you guys can give onto this, because I don't know how familiar you are with the European scene. What kind of your thoughts are on the EU? Is it just going to be clean sweep for TCG, or do you think there's any hope for MIM or Boon?
Because of the age restrictions, I think the closest matchup will be TCG versus Maiden Meta, but I'm going to have to give it to TCG there. I've seen them in scrims, and I've sort of went on the EU servers and fought against them in scrims. And although I do, with sort of this other pug of underage people who can't be in the tournament, shout out to Purple Smokers, guys on EU I've been playing with. They're a bunch of Frenchies, so they've been giving me some French lessons. But other than that, I'm going to hand it to TCG, since EU is really missing out on a bunch of its good players because of these restrictions.
Phantaram and Backpack, any thoughts on the European qualifiers?
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with Nos mostly. Like, I don't know. I haven't been on EU in a while, so I don't know. And when I was on EU, I didn't even actually get to play with TCG that much, because they never team queued, so I only played like 5 or so tournament matches with them, and they were all like qualifiers, not even against better teams. So I actually didn't get that much experience with TCG, despite being on their team for like a month and a half or something.
Backpack?
I did 1v1 people a lot on their team, like Rom and stuff,
Yeah.
and Sizer, but I never did much team queue or anything with them.
Yeah, I don't really know much about the EU scene. I mean, I scrimmed kind of, and I feel like, I've played against CCG before on EU servers, and like I've played against Maiden Meta on EU servers. Both were pretty decent. I thought, it was hard to gauge, because like in some matches someone might have been really lagging badly, and that's why we lost that so terribly, and then we like lose closely or win closely to another game. So it's hard for me to really gauge which team's better. I feel like I just want to say TCG because they're so much more known, but I really can't give a good guesstimate on which one of them is going to take it.
Yeah, personally for me, I was seeing MIM. MIM actually did a pretty good job for what I was expecting to see anyway in the TOG finals. And again, those are basically the same matchups that we'll be seeing. The unfortunate part again is that the fact that MIM had a really good opportunity to use the past. Again, I could be completely wrong in saying this, but I was kind of trying to keep a scout out on EU, trying to watch their team queues and stuff to kind of see who's been queuing, who's been watching, and I may have just been looking at the wrong times, but I really think MIM had a really good chance had they kind of like hunkered down and practiced this week. But unless they've been doing stuff in private servers with other teams, I haven't really been seeing too much of them. So I'm not looking forward to too strong of a performance of them, which obviously would basically hand it to TCG. But who knows? Like I said, they could have been doing stuff in practice. They definitely had some strong plays going on in the qualifiers, so if they really got their stuff together for this weekend, I think they had maybe a chance against TCG, but I think that the favorite is definitely going to be in favor of TCG, and a logical choice, if I had to make a guess, would be TCG as well. So looking like on both ends we have the favorites kind of unanimously is going to be NA, Absurd, obviously, as 2 out of 3 of the guests here from Absurd. And then as well for EU, looks like TCG. So talking kind of, again, assuming a few things here, but assuming both those teams end up going to China, what do you think of that matchup as we kind of segue to that next topic here?
I think because there's going to be a month interlude in between the qualifiers and the actual event in China itself on December 3rd and 4th, I think are the dates. It might be 4th and 5th, but just double check me on that later. I think that 1 month will really benefit my team more so than TCG because TCG's been at it for a long time, so they already have that good synergy established, whereas my team just recently went through like 2 different roster changes and a little bit of a comp change, and OstrichEggs isn't even sure what he's playing with team swapping back between his Necro and NG nowadays. And I think that added month would give them the needed month-long practice, and I think it'll really help them establish the synergy they need and get their strats down.
Cool.
And when it comes down to it, all I gotta say is, let's not get the O3'd.
Phantaram, as someone who's actually going to be playing for Absurd, if you end up going to Beijing, how do you feel about that matchup versus TCG?
Well,
you've played with them, and you've played with them too, so that's a bit of an advantage in your end.
A little bit,
you may know a bit about what they do.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, if I'm gonna base it off of the matches, like with our pug, we went to EU and we played against them and went 2 and 3 with a pug with lag. I think we actually, even though we don't have Nos and Cade, I think we actually stand a pretty good chance. I'm gonna give the advantage to us actually. We will win.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
just barely.
Bold
Just barely.
statement.
Yeah. And I think part of it is just EU's comps aren't optimal. Like, that's the truth about it. I think they'll learn. I think TCG's players, they're all like very dedicated to their class, and you know, they all just got together and started playing, and every other EU player just saw TCG winning with that, and they thought, you know, let's try those comps. And I don't know, NA is sort of mirroring it, right? Like, they see us winning with our comp, and other people try out our comp, and so EU's been stuck on that same comp for a long time, and they're not trying the stuff that NA is doing now, or any new stuff, really. Like, Necromancer is really strong, and you hardly see anybody trying it.
It's like a unicorn in Europe, because there's like, I think I know like one person that plays Necro, like usually in the EU. There's just none of them there, whereas NA, they've just been showing up more and more recently.
Yeah.
Backpack, thoughts on the Chinese finals, assuming it's an Absurd versus TCG?
I feel like, I think Absurd definitely has the potential to totally win it. Like, we've been, Nos, Cade, and I have been, like, setting up pugs and scrimming them just about every night. And I think if we keep up practicing and whatnot, and helping them practice, like, I think they'll be really successful. I think TCG, as Phantaram kind of stated, like, I don't think their comp's that great. I think that it requires good rotations, but like even when you're rotating like flawlessly with that comp, I feel like Double Ellie and NG Necro Thief or NG Thief is going to be superior. And I think on a mechanical level, I think all the players going to this tournament are going to be at the highest level they're going to be playing at. So I don't think that's going to really matter as much as just the composition and how the teams rotate. And I think both teams definitely have the potential to win. Right now, I'd give the advantage to Absurd. Honestly, just watching those scrims and like playing against TCG, I felt like while they were really good and they had done stuff I hadn't seen before, it was still very beatable. And I think, I'd give it to Absurd. I think it'll be close though, and it depends what we're saying. Absurd will get better, but TCG could totally get better. They could change something. I don't know.
That's actually an important factor too. Kind of going into my own thoughts on this, I actually somewhat agree with both you and Phantaram and Backpack and the fact that I do think if things are going on the current path, I think Absurd might manage to clutch the victory at Beijing. And there's kind of a back end reason for that. Like I said, the NA team so far from what I've seen has been taking this super duper seriously. Like I know that you guys have been having all sorts of practices going on in private servers and whatnot. You guys have been really drilling hard, and especially because you guys needed to get those 2 subs going last weekend as well for the qualifiers this weekend. But for TCG. I think that one of the things with them is the fact that they're fairly confident, and I don't think that they have, at least not recently, I don't think that they've been doing like a lot of practice. Like I haven't been seeing them popping in the team queue too often. I don't know if they've been doing anything behind the scenes or whatnot, but I haven't been seeing too much of them in practice. And I think that
I can confirm that they have been doing some secret scrims behind the scenes. Like I remember just 2 days ago, I was scrimming them with Team Purple Smokers, and they sort of do that almost daily now.
So it does increase. It is or has been increasing recently. So with that in mind, that could definitely be a good lead for them. But I think like the past month or so has been a bit iffy from them, as I understand. So I think again that's going to be the key thing for them is to make sure that they keep their core practices up and going there as well. Because I'm sure that Absurd, from based on what I've seen from you guys in just the past week, you guys are probably going to be drilling pretty hard, which means that if anything, it's going to be a very, very close matchup. So that'll definitely be one to look forward to if it does end up happening. Any final thoughts on that before we move on to our next topic here?
Does anybody know much about how China's, like, what they're going to do?
That's one of the things we're going to move on to here in a second.
Oh, okay.
Is kind of
thought it was sort of on
topic
topic.
China. Yeah. Like, I think everybody's kind of factoring out the Chinese teams, but there's a somewhat good reason for that. We'll talk about that in just a minute here. So before we get to talking about China, though, I mean, how do you guys feel about all three of you have participated in the TOG/WTS sequence now? How do you feel about the way the kind of the proceedings and the format of it has been so far? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Why not? So on and so forth. Any issues with it?
I've been very disappointed.
we know Backpack is
with the way it's worked out.
The too young for esports rule.
I think it was all right. I think one of the major problems was like almost the lack of competition with only one team going. You know, what's the motivation for the fourth or even the third and seed to like try and compete to go? Especially when the team like Absurd shows up in the TOG and totally destroys everyone. You know, I think it really kills motivation and like for people to go out and get their passports and do all that business. If they really don't feel like they have a chance of winning, I feel that it really turns away a lot of players. So having only one team go to a LAN event, I think will, you know, kind of decrease some of the tryhardness, I guess, of other teams. Like I feel like when it comes to the NA region, I feel like when there's two teams going, I think the competition is going to be huge. Just because if there's one team steamrolling everyone, you know, all the other teams will at least be fighting for that second spot. And I think that's what it's really going to come down to in the coming up WTSs. In this one, it was a little unfortunate that one team was so much better than all the others, but I think it was still, you know, a good event. And I think there were good games within the TOGs. I just like the finals. I don't think were good games, but like when we played Apex, I thought those were like interesting games to watch, and even some of the other games were pretty interesting to watch. And yeah, I feel like it could possibly change with the next coming WTSs, but as of it stands, with only one team going from each region, I feel like that really gets rid of a lot of competition, and that hurts the scene.
Phantaram and Nos, thoughts?
I get what they're trying to go for here. They're trying to, like, you know, promote competition between the regions, which is really cool. I like it. But I think, like what Backpack said, it really, their motivation, another part of the motivation is to bring players back to the game. But when everyone knows or everyone thinks that one team has a really high chance of going and they don't stand a chance, they're just not going to try. So it doesn't motivate them. So maybe what would have been better to fulfill both of those would be like, so they're going to have 3 tournaments throughout, like, what, I don't know, a year or so. Instead of that, you have 2 or 3 region tournaments in each region, like 3 tournaments for only China, 3 tournaments for only EU, and 3 tournaments for only NA. And then, like, the team that places the best in all 3 of those goes to, like, a thing where China, EU, and NA meets at the end of all 3 of those or something, you know? because then like what 3 or 4 teams from each region get to go to their like local tournaments, and so it like really motivates a lot of teams to try to compete, and then the best teams get to go to the like region-based tournament. You know, I think that would have been a lot better, something like that.
Something for the kind of mid tier, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a prevalent issue for a while. I think we're going to talk more on that later too. Nos?
I'm sort of seeing things different than sort of how Phanta and Backpack is. I'm sort of like taking it from a more realistic standpoint. I feel like we're not quite there yet where ArenaNet can afford to support sending all those teams there, and also in terms of if that's a good idea or not to send multiple teams. I don't think it necessarily motivates, or rather, like, dismotivates, if that's a word, people from trying to stop the best team. 'Cause I've been seeing all these teams that have lost practice more now that they have, sort of they can prove and redeem themselves. Uncivilized Rough Boys I've been seeing still practice, even though they didn't do so hot in the TOG. Radioactive didn't even make it to the top 8 in the TOG, and they're still practicing a lot. And there's more examples like Yarik's team, etc., etc. So I feel like the motivation is there still, and if we send more, that's not really going to change it much.
I think I definitely sympathize with Nas. I do agree with that there's definitely a lot of kind of lower teams that are getting prepared now. And I think the reason that this first one wasn't so competitive necessarily was because it just came like so fast. It was announced and then signups opened like a week and a half later. I think that was like a little bit too quick for some people to actually get their teams formulated. Again, now people know, I guess people assume, I hope people assume at this point that the second season should follow pretty shortly after the first one. At least we would assume so based on the kind of time scale. So with that in mind, I think a lot of people now know the fact that there is going to be, maybe not for this one, but the fact that there is at least within the next however many months, there is like $100,000 coming up in prizing. The fact should be there that they should still be getting ready for that. They should still be practicing and whatnot. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of NOS. At the same time, I do agree with what Backpack and Phantaram have said, is where there are still a lot of mid to low level teams that are definitely having some issues just kind of getting themselves up there. And right now, they still come into tournaments and they just get stomped out. Not only in those, but things like the weeklies too. So it's more like, what's the reason for them to even participate if they have no chance? Basically, I think is what you two were saying. Am I correct?
Yeah. But Nos also said something about price, but I don't like what flying within your own country is like way less than half of flying overseas, right? So you can cut that cost and then maybe even just offer less money for the region-based tournaments. So I mean, I think the price could be adjusted either way for either format to be the same or less or whatever.
Cool. So very good. So we're gonna do one more thing, and then I think as we move away from WTS, after we talk about this, well, actually we got 2 more things to talk about with WTS, and after we finish talking about WTS, we're gonna take a break because I think we may be adding a 5th person into here. More details on that in a bit. But moving on to our next topic here, we were talking about China a few minutes ago, so moving into that now is not really so much talking about how do we think the Chinese teams are going to do, but do you guys think that there is an interest, not only amongst yourselves, but amongst kind of the general populace of the Guild Wars 2 population? Do you think that there's an interest in wanting to see what the Chinese teams are doing? Because it's been very hard to kind of get information and coverage out of the Chinese region. So would you guys be interested in seeing more of that? Obviously, they've already had their qualifiers. They had theirs last weekend. But with future and upcoming WTS seasons, do you guys think that you would like to see more Chinese play?
I think it'd be really interesting to see. I mean, I've never, I saw them play at the All-Star tournament, and I was like, it's kind of what I expected. They didn't win any games. They were decent, but I feel like the longer they have the game, the better they'll get. And like in a lot of games, the most competitive players are from Asia, so I think it's really good to have them in the scene. But I feel like they do need to be more involved. And I know they're kind of sheltered off, but I think having open streams would help increase the popularity of the game a lot too, if North American players saw it. Yeah. Cool.
My take on it is I think it's always interesting to see how each region takes its own like mix and meta on the game, and then it's always interesting to have the comparison between those 3 metas and sort of determining what's best, or maybe taking the like bits and pieces of each region's meta to form the universal meta, which is like the dream of esports.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're gonna have a lot to prove in the WTS, and only time will tell if they can fulfill that task.
All right, very good, very good. But so again, just to give a bit of context here in regards to what actually has been going on with the Chinese scene, just to give a bit of an update for anybody who has not been able to dig, as you do have to look pretty hard to find information on the Chinese WTS. And anyway, so last weekend basically was the Chinese qualifiers. They actually had a LAN for theirs. They had a LAN, I believe it was in Shanghai last weekend with 3 teams, because again, for anybody who is not aware, the Chinese version of Guild Wars 2 has 3 regions, not 2 like we have. Like our kind of version of the client has Europe and North America. In the Chinese version of the game, there's actually 3 regions. So they had to have 3 qualifiers, basically like TOG, and they had 3 teams coming out of that. And then they had a LAN last weekend where all 3 of those teams played, I believe, round robin play, and then the top 2 teams out of that were decided, and those are the 2 teams that are going to be going to Beijing about a month from now. I don't know the names of those teams, unfortunately, so I am not able to grab those for you, but we do have the 2 Chinese teams are confirmed now for the WTS finals. We just have to find out who's going to be going for NA and who's going to be going for EU. I assume, obviously, that we'll get more information on those Chinese teams in a few weeks here as ANET ramps up their promotion for the finals, but at the moment it's a bit hard to find that info as it's mainly only on the Chinese websites. Anyway, though, moving onwards to our next topic, we're going to talk a bit about the finals. The 2 previous Guild Wars LANs that have been done live have had their share of issues. Both PAX as well as the Gamescom, Invitational have had a couple issues. So talking a bit about that. So this is a question, again, being phrased to all 3 of you. What has kind of been things that we've seen go right? What have been some things that we've seen gone wrong in previous LAN events? And what do you guys think we need to see in Beijing to make sure that this event goes right? What are you guys expecting to come out of this one?
Close games. Close games are going to be very healthy for this scene, and I think there's no denying that. That's what we all like to see, because I remember for the TOG, just when we were like playing our games, everyone was sort of depressed, like, man, these games suck. Not even trying. It's like 500 to 50. Apex could have done a better job. So if they're close games, I think the community's going to be happy. There's going to be more hype around it. It's going to show that the game is also more balanced than people think.
Also, I feel like a bunch of problems come up with like players using their own peripherals, and that'll, I feel, be good if they're allowed to. I don't know. People play better like that, and I agree with Nos. You know, closer games will at least make it look competitive, even if it maybe isn't. But I think this one should be competitive. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. So I hope that a more competitive finals series will bring more traction to the game, and also kind of get rid of this whole bullshit about NA and EU and blah 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 is better and this crap. And because like we shouldn't necessarily be like, I don't know, fighting with each other. It should be like more of a cohesive gaming environment, I feel, between North American and EU servers. I think that'd be really cool to see that. Sure.
Fanta?
I can see sort of the things you're hinting at in the past.
You were at the live event, so.
Oh yeah,
if
at
you wanna,
Gamescom.
if you want to talk about it, like, I mean, things that we saw go wrong, there are things that you want to see go right at this next one. Like, what are kind of your thoughts?
I loved Gamescom. It was really fun. Everything went really well. I think part of that is ArenaNet handled it and everything themselves. You know, the problems that PAX. A lot of it had to do with miscommunications between tournament organizers and ArenaNet. So as long as there's good, either they have community organized things with good communication between ArenaNet and the community or the organizer of the tournament, or ArenaNet just handles almost everything themselves, you know, with just like shoutcasters and stuff. And then I think everything can run smoothly.
All right, cool, very good. So with that out of the way, guys, I think that is going to close up our discussion on WTS. We are going to take a very short break. Hopefully it's not too long. I do have to change the overlays slightly because we're going to bring a 5th person in here. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to set that up on the overlays, but we're going to be bringing in OstrichEggs now, who will be joining the stream as we segue over into talk about the PvP scene, balance, and a lot more, guys. So once again, the continuation of Meta Episode 0 is going to be continuing, hopefully in about 5 minutes here, folks. as soon as we get OstrichEggs in, and we're going to talk more about, like I said, next topic will be the PvP scene. So stick around for that, guys, and we'll be returning in just a moment.